just gonna tap this. Perfect. Awesome. One final mic test. Could you just tap the microphone? Great. Okay, go ahead and tap it. Great. Let's try it.
Check, check.
Here, hit it a little harder. Okay, perfect. As long as it's picking up a signal. All right. Well, I think we'll get started. So mics will be live. And
Great.
Hello and welcome to today's Hinckley Forum. My name is Divya Sundar. The Hinckley Institute of Politics is a nonpartisan institute at the University of Utah. The Hinckley provides an array of transformative experiences from students through internships, forums, and classes. Hinckley Forums seek to foster public discourse and civil debate on the most current and pressing issues, bringing in local, national, and international thought leaders. Each year, the Hinckley Institute of Politics, the David Eccles School of Business, Gardner Policy Institute, and the Daniel Funds Ethics Initiative work together to host a series of events to promote principle-based ethics education. This year's theme is Ethics in College Sports, focusing on NIL, or Name, Image, and Likeness. Today's forum is titled The Sport of Ethics, Understanding the Ethical Landscape of NIL, and we are excited to be joined by some great panelists. Brett Eden is a director of business development at the University of Utah. He oversees the trademark licensing program for the entire university, centralized business development enterprises, and student media. Gavin Van Wagner is the director of major gifts for Utah Athletics. His responsibilities include growing the athletics fundraising efforts by identifying, cultivating, and maintaining major gift donor relationships, and ensuring that donors and fans have an amazing customer experience. Ashley West is a University of Utah women's volleyball team athlete. Ashley is a part of a sports legacy. Her father is a former NFL football player, her mother played softball at Nebraska, and her sister Jordan currently plays on the Colorado State softball team. Ashley is a National Honor Society member and has served in the MMP, a first-year mentor program. Today's panel is moderated by Eric Neff, our Ethics Week keynote speaker and the Director of Admission Advisement and Recruitment for the Dumke College of Health Professions at Weber State University. Please join me in welcoming our guests.
Well, first off, and most importantly, thank you so much for all being here. It's really great to be able to have this opportunity to have this discussion. Most importantly, this is a learning environment, so it's a great opportunity for you guys to be able to learn and for us to learn as well about what and how you are all thinking about this very important topic. What we're going to do is we're going to ask a number of questions that have been pre-formatted for our panelists, and then at the end of this discussion, we're going to give you guys the opportunity to do to ask some questions that you might have. So with that being said, once again, thanks so much for being here. We want to learn together, and through this discussion, hopefully we're going to have that opportunity, and then we're going to be able to grow in this academic forum. So first off, we're going to start out with a question to Gavin. And most importantly, also I'd like to thank each of our panelists for taking time out of their busy schedules to be with us today. So thank you so much. So first off, thank you, Gavin, and then also we're going to start our questions that way. So in regard to NIL, how did we get to where we're at? How did we get here? Why are we here, and where are we headed? And where do ethics come into play?
Awesome. Yeah, well, thanks for the opportunity to be here. Expert is kind of that's a stretch for me, but I'm happy to be here and talk about NIL. I think how we got here, for anyone who's followed it, we're coming up on almost 3 years ago, the NCAA came out with some interim guidance on allowing student athletes to monetize their name, image, and likeness, to utilize their brand to make money, to create branding opportunities, to do deals with different companies, create shirts with their name and number on them, and sell those out in the marketplace. And so prior to July 1, 2021, that was not an option for any student athlete, which as you look at that, you've got student athletes that come in and build their brand and are become well recognized, especially within the community of a school, that were unable to, become an ambassador, an influencer, or do anything to make any money while they're building these brands and creating opportunities for themselves. So it really didn't make a ton of sense, because other students on campus could, if you were a musician, you could be a student, enrolled, have a scholarship, put out an album, and make money from that. And if you're a student athlete, you can't monetize that. So the NCAA came out with guidance in July 1st, 2021, that allowed that to happen. And within that guidance, there were some rules set. One of the rules, quid pro quo, so in exchange for any work that a student athlete does, or in exchange for any compensation that a student receives, there has to be work. So if Ashley does a deal with a restaurant or with a car dealership, she's got to go out and whatever money or gift or whatever she receives, she's got to do a social media post or make an appearance or sign some autographs. There just has to be that quid pro quo. There was an inducement rule within that too, that colleges or boosters couldn't induce student athletes to come. So they couldn't say, if you were coming, if you come to the University of Utah, or if you come to a specific school, you're going to get this amount in compensation. Although there are some rules changing on that, there's been some recent, there's an injunction in Tennessee that recently happened that's kind of upending what's going on there, and that's changing it quite a bit as well, as far as that inducement or the ability to let student athletes know what their opportunities might look like when you come. And then you couldn't offer anything as a pay-for-play, so if you come here, if you score this many points, if you do this, you can't be paid directly for that. So that's as far as in my opinion, I think it's been awesome for student athletes who build a brand, who work so hard to get to this level, to be at the University of Utah. You've dedicated, and I'm sure, I'm not the expert, Ashley will talk about this, but just knowing a lot of these student athletes, the amount of time, effort, sacrifice that you put in to get to this level is unbelievable. And they should absolutely be able to monetize that. People should be able to get to know them, work with them, have them be the face of companies, have them go out and be ambassadors, let them be part of businesses, put them on shirts, do all of that. So for me, as an administrator with Utah Athletics, it's been great to see student athletes get this early access to becoming an entrepreneur, learning how to negotiate, learning how to structure deals, learning how to pay taxes, right? You've got to, you get a 1099, and we take a lot of pride in making sure our student athletes are set up for that they understand the implications. We hope that they do a tremendous amount of deals and find that, but we've also got to educate them, make sure they're aware of what that entails as well. And so for me, with a business background, I love that early on student athletes can get this experience. And so that's sort of how we got there. The NCAA made some changes. It's been really good. It's complicated because the rules change from time to time, and it's a little uncharted, but I feel really good about where the University of Utah has gone with that. We've adapted as quickly as we've needed to, and then our goal is to try to help student athletes, however big or important it is for each student athlete to participate in NIL. We want to meet them there, help them try to find opportunities. We can't facilitate or broker or be directly involved with those, but our goal is to help them connect with people, businesses, our community, to get as engaged as they'd like to be. I feel like I talked a long time.
That was awesome. No, that was perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
That was a great way to get us kicked off and get us going on this discussion. So wonderful. Thank you so much. So when we're talking about NIL, we're talking about how important the student role is and how important students are and student athletes. So we're going to pivot a little bit. We're going to ask Ashley a question. How has NIL affected you and your teammates? And do you feel the changes that have been made by the NCAA, whether if they're ethical or not, with regards to student athletes?
Yeah. So I think NIL is a great opportunity for student athletes, both male and female. It's helped me and my teammates get our faces onto some websites, some Instagram, some TikToks, just stuff like that. It's given us the opportunity to really build a platform for female athletes. And I personally take a lot of pride in the platform that I've built. And I built a platform that I take pride in and that I want to stand on and live for every day. I know there's there's a lot to say about female athletics right now, and I think that NIL, if used the right way, can be a big, pivotal scene for women in sports. We're seeing the Angel Reeses of the world, the Livy Dunns of the world, making insane amount of numbers, right? But it's not just that, it's not about the money. To me, it's about the networking. Yeah, we're all going into the adulthood, right? We're all trying to find a job. And yeah, the money's good, and we love to get a cute hoodie or, get a little TikTok posted, but I've really found a lot of benefit in meeting new people and getting my name out there to, business people who I would have never been able to give the opportunity to talk to without NIL. So yes, I think we can all get very distracted in the fact that student athletes are getting paid immense amount of money. But at the same time, I think it's really important that we start to focus on what networking is coming out of it and how women in sports, me and my teammates especially, are putting ourselves out there into the world of adulthood and business.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashley. It's not all about the Benjamins.
Yeah.
It's about opportunity. It's about being able to see other opportunities. It's about being able to grow as an adult. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. So, Brett, with what Ashley has said, and if you could kind of piggyback off of some things that Gavin has addressed, what mechanisms can be done or are being done to protect athletes who are participating in NIL or participating in deals that help them to expand their NIL?
It's a very nuanced question, right? And so trying to be, I guess, narrow in my answer here. There's a lot of things and a lot of directions that you can go in this, but Gavin touched on a couple things. We're not allowed as an institution to be involved in anything negotiations, the direct negotiations. However, in my office, we're responsible for the brand of the university. And oftentimes, an athlete or a company that is working with an athlete also wants to associate with that brand, right? It's a cohesive group, if you will, and together we're probably better than we would independently. And so we have the unique opportunity to be involved in a lot of these agreements. And so things that we do to help with that is to ensure that rights are clear. Obviously, we're not allowed to negotiate on behalf of the athletes, so we have to focus on the rights of the university, the rights of our marks, how they can be used. And oftentimes, at least my experience thus far, where the university wants to be is a good place, and oftentimes athletes want to be in a good place as well. And so our interests have aligned in a lot of ways. And so that natural alignment really has helped protect both of our interests. But a lot of education helps, right, for the athletes. There's a lot of tax laws out there, and if it's tax season, if you're filing your taxes, it's a pain. And so new in the world, that's a challenge, right? Or at least new to paying taxes for many of the athletes. We do a lot of education on our side, trademark usage education, primarily with the vendors that are wanting to use the marks. But oftentimes we work with Gavin and his team on education for the athletes as well. But those are, a lot of what we deal with is the contracts. And so our goal is to work into the contracts, the language that protects the university. And thus far, our interests have aligned with a lot of the athletes. And so that has naturally helped, if you will. Does that make sense?
Perfect, yeah. I think that's awesome. It's all about protecting each other's interests. It's about providing education. And I think that's one of the major things that the the NCAA wanted to have happen is to be able to have an opportunity not just to be able to have athletes or student athletes have access to their name, image, and likeness, but also to gain knowledge and to have an opportunity to gain some elements of expertise, if you will, from their experience. So kind of a couple of cool things that have happened. I mean, we were in the state of Utah, HB 202, House Bill 202 was just passed that has some elements, and we're not going to really talk a lot about that, but elements that are designed to help protect athletes more in terms of that. So that's pretty cool. When we're talking about student athlete and we're getting a better understanding of what a student athlete is, there's a lot of different definitions out there of what a student athlete is. So Ashley, could you define what you believe a student athlete is and your definition of amateurism with regards to student athletes?
Yeah. I think when you hear the word student athlete, everyone's like, oh yeah, an athlete who steps into the classroom here and there. And I think that I can speak on behalf of the whole athletic department here that we really are driven every single day to put student in front of athlete. Yeah, like every single day we have our tutoring sessions, we have our study groups, when our teams go on the road and we're traveling, typically we have like a study time put to the side for that. And I think that in this world of NIL, that can kind of get lost, right? Like we're sitting here and we're like, oh, these athletes who are really successful in their sport, on the field, on the court, in the gym, whatever it is good because they're good at putting the ball over the net or putting the ball in the hoop. But we're still here at a university getting an education. And I think a lot of our athletes here at the U do a really good job of taking pride in that. I can speak on behalf of the volleyball team that we have multiple of my teammates are in the biomedical engineer program, and I think that we take a lot of pride in that. We have a lot of kines majors and stuff like that those are majors that you have to put the school in front of it, right? You have to study, you have to stay up late when we have an early lift the next day. So I think that can kind of get lost sometimes when we're talking about the money that goes into these athletes, is that yes, we're student athletes, and yes, we have the flashy money and the clothes and all that, but at the same time, like we're still in class, we're still sitting next to, some of you. And so, yeah, I think that's just something that can get lost and also just needs to be talked about a little bit more. I don't know if you guys follow a lot of these social media platforms, but the athletics department does a really good job sharing about how successful these student athletes are, because the work goes unseen, because the work that goes seen is the work that goes out on to TV, and the success, the records, the games won and lost, all the hard fight wins and losses and stuff, when actually, yes, those are things that are happening and those are real life, but our separate life is also the GPAs that are coming across and who gets to walk the stage in the spring. So
very nice, very nice. That's always about students.
Yeah.
It's always about students. I think we lose focus, and I really liked how you emphasize on that word focus. We got to really focus on the element that we're still students, and they're still going through the same process that all other students are going through. They're gaining an education. So that's awesome, and that's a major tenet behind the NCAA's definition of amateur is their students first, gaining a degree. So fantastic. Thank you so much, Ashley. Gavin, we're gonna go a little bit of a different direction here. So how does the Pac-12 or major conference or a major conference fit into the NIL, and how has it affected the recent changes within, let's say, a major conference or with the Pac-12?
Yeah, that's a good question. So initially, obviously, there are changes going on with the conference, but when this interim guidance launched from the NCAA, we were ready. Mark Harlan, Charmel Green had prepared. It didn't catch anyone by surprise. We were ready to launch that day. We launched a program called Elevate U in conjunction with the Lausanne Entrepreneur Institute, the David Eccles School of Business. And so we were ready to have these resources available for student athletes to, it wasn't super defined what was going on, but we wanted to embrace it. We wanted to get involved. We wanted to provide them with as many resources as we could. That morning when this launched, July 1st back then. So in terms of the conference, what we're always trying to do from a department, and again, Mark and Charmel and John Jentz have really been involved in this and pushing this. How do we let student athletes, how do we get them involved in this? How do we push education around this? How do we push opportunities? And so toward that end, we created some partnerships. One, right out of the gate, we started working with a company called Brandar that Brett's team helped us set up, which is a co-licensing, co-branding opportunity where you can pair up the university marks, the logo, which is so recognizable, with student athletes. So there are royalty opportunities for merchandise like that to sell. We set up a partnership with Influencer, which created essentially a LinkedIn style marketplace for businesses. So part of my job is to go out and find businesses that want to engage in NIL, bring them onto that platform so that student athletes can go on there, search through different companies that are listed there and say, oh, this sounds cool. And companies on that platform will actually list direct opportunities. Student athletes can opt into them, go pursue more. And so we were really excited to launch that platform, to give that as a resource. Because again, what as Ashley mentioned, they are, and I'm sort of behind the scenes on this, but I see how hard all of these student athletes work. It is busy. A lot of you are students right now. You probably have jobs, have other things. They have a very busy schedule, practice, lifting, nutrition, all of these things that are super dialed in and they've got to pay attention to. Plus be a phenomenal student athlete. You've got to fulfill your job on the team. You've got to travel, you've got to be prepared. So they are busy and they put that student part first, and it reflects in the graduation rates of our department, something that Mark takes a lot of pride in. Yeah, that's what's important. But we understand that it's changing and that student athletes want more opportunities. And so with this shift, what we've tried to do is be as innovative as possible. We've been able to bring on different partners, look at other opportunities. We've had, as all of you know, as part of the Utah ecosystem, we have such a great group of supporters, fans, donors that want to get involved, that ask, how can I support? How do we get engaged? And so that's been really great for us that we've been able to try to structure those partnerships where they can get direct access to student athletes and can start setting up those opportunities. So for us, listen, and by the way, we're in the presence of greatness here. Coach Lanier is back there, our volleyball coach. Yeah, so she should be up. You want an expert? She should be up here talking to all of us. But and so I think prior to NIL, student athletes looked at a university or at a program. They usually weighed a couple of different factors, right? Coaches, right? Am I going to gel with this coach? Is this coach going to help me, whether it's get to the next professional level, whether it's to reach my goals as a student athlete at this institution in college? So they're probably weighing that factor. They're looking at the facilities. What are the facilities like? Is this going to be a great place to play? Or am I going to be surrounded by fans? Is this going to be awesome? They're going to weigh education as well and say, is Utah going to be the place for me? And then they're going to look at wins probably, right? I mean, that's probably part of it.
Yeah.
You want to know, am I going to a program that can win? And so prior to NIL, there were probably, and Coach Lanier will keep me honest on that, but that was probably, student athletes were probably weighing that, and one factor means a little more than the other, but that's, all right, I really like Coach. I really like that they win, and I think I can win. And then NIL becomes this fifth component of it. And so for student athletes, they've got to decide, if NIL is my only thing and that's where I want to, that's all I care about, different schools are going to be maybe a different fit. I don't know how that fits with each culture of each team and that sort of thing. But if it's a factor and it's important to the student athlete, what we wanted to do, I can't speak for the Pac-12, but from the conference or from the school, is be as competitive as possible. If that's important to Ashley to coming to this school, like we want to try to make it so that there are those opportunities. And it's up to her to manage all those other responsibilities, but as you can tell, these student athletes are amazing. They can I couldn't have managed it. I could barely make it to class on time, and I didn't have any of this other stuff. But they can manage it. They're so talented in so many different ways of being able to excel on the floor, on the court, in the classroom, and then also manage a business and find how to build their brand so that they can propel these opportunities while still excelling in the sport that they came to play. So for us, from Utah Athletics, our goal is always to be as innovative and as competitive as possible, so that if that factor is important to student athletes, that we're going to win in that arena for them. And they've got to do their part, they've got to work, but we love trying to help student athletes connect with people to do deals, create their brand, learn how to market, learn how to do whatever they want to do, because it just gives them that much more advantage earlier in life. Most people wait until they finish school and then they say, oh, maybe I want to be an entrepreneur, maybe I want to do this, and now they're getting to do this. You're a sophomore? Mm-hmm. Yeah, sophomore year of college, they know what an agreement is, they know what a deal is, they know what a 1099 is, which is a good problem to have.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But pay it, make sure they pay it, they will find you. And so that's awesome. I mean, imagine her in she's gonna be way past, so it's awesome. And we just we wanna support that, help them reach their goals, and they're amazing. They're amazing to work with. Yeah, we're super fortunate here at Utah.
Oh man, Gavin, I love your enthusiasm and your optimism. Yeah. I think it's infectious. I think it's amazing. And you're absolutely, in a lot of those elements, you're absolutely right. When an athlete's coming on to a campus, they're looking at what they want or what they're looking for from that program. Yeah, those are the major factors they're looking at, I mean, on my own right, I think it was very important to find out, hey, is this some place that I'm going to be able to grow as an adult, as a person, develop? And I mean, being a student athlete, it's 2 full-time jobs. You're a student and then you're an athlete. And it really is, it takes a lot, and you have to be able to find a way to balance everything and be able to have an idea of what you're getting yourself into, and then you want those structures around you that's going to help you to be successful. So awesome, Gavin, you're fantastic. That was amazing. A couple of dates that Gavin brought up, he talked about July 1st. I mean, we, on July 30th, a decision was handed down, June 30th, 2021, a decision was handed down by the Supreme Court of the United States in NCAA versus Alston. This was a 9-0 unanimous decision, which was a finding against the NCAA, which broke their pro-competitive hold on NCAA athletics, and so it really opened up a lot of doors. What's really interesting about NIL had nothing really, I mean, it was really a cursory kind of on the side with regards to that decision, but I think that's really important to give you guys a little bit of background with regards to why on July 1, the University of Utah and Extension, their conference mates were ready just to go because they'd already had an idea of seeing what was going to be happening. And when we talk about this whole idea of amateurism and student athletes and academic development, it's important to really focus on that element, that the U has provided those elements to help their student athletes to succeed in all these different areas. And I'm glad, Gavin, you did just a great job of explaining those things. So Brett, how is the NIL affecting academic development, and student athletes overall, if you kind of want to go? This is something that's really near and dear to Brett and I, so.
We did our dissertation on NIL from a student perspective, I guess, together. And it was focused on this question, right? We wrapped that up a couple years ago, so the answer may be a little different than then, right? Ashley touched on a lot of this, and arguably Ashley's probably a better person to answer this specific question. But I can give you some of my thoughts. Yeah, probably all the questions. That's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair.
That is fair.
How is it impacting education?
Yeah, academic development, yeah.
Or academic development? I would say, I'm going to answer this question in a similar vein to what Gavin said. I think in my role here at the university, part of my goal, part of my team's goal is to help make the opportunities as efficient as possible so that our athletes, you mentioned 2 full-time jobs, a student and an athlete. I would argue there's 3 now that NIL could be a full-time gig, right? So that they can maintain their focus. And I love what Ashley said about student first. So I don't know if I have a great answer to that, other than in my role, my goal is to make it as easy as possible for them to navigate the complex world of contracts, trademark law, and so on. And it's a very complicated world that I live in. And so there's no reason to overcomplicate it, I guess. Maybe that's a good way. But how has it impacted academic success? Hopefully in a positive way. I would pass the ball or set the ball to Ashley to maybe answer the final part of that question. Our goal is to make it simple as possible for our student athletes like Ashley to excel in those spaces.
Yeah, I would say I've learned a lot from, our support system that we have through all of this. We have a meeting every year, like the compliance and NIL meeting with, the big people in the offices. And they really do a good job of breaking it down and in the most simplest way possible. Because every day the rules and the laws and all the fine print that goes on with NIL is constantly changing. Whether or not you can be in, a certain shirt in a video, or you can be in a certain facility in a picture. Like all of these things are changing every single day. And Gavin and Brett do a really good job of educating the student athletes about what we can and can't do. Because at the end of the day, if we do come across, or if someone in the big world comes across a video that we've posted, a post, a paragraph, anything that we've put out there on behalf of our own personal brand that represents our name, image, and likeness, and something goes wrong, then our eligibility gets put on the line. And that's the biggest thing that I've been able to learn from this, is that I can take any kind of questions to them and I can be like, oh, can I post this because this X, Y, and Z is in this video? And they can be like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna check on that for you and come back to you. That way I know that I'm being safe for my eligibility, because yes, NIL is a big thing of our lives, but at the same time, I showed up at the University of Utah to get an education and play volleyball. So that's what I've learned.
That's awesome. That's perfect. Number 1 and number 2, right? Our goals. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Brett. Thank you so much. And Gavin, please, yeah.
I'll chime in just one thing. I think something, and this speaks to the University of Utah, is our courses change. We adapt. There's a Lausanne Entrepreneur Institute that has 3D printing, and so as any industry evolves or adapts, we've been quick to change our courses and everything within academics. And I think that's probably similar to what's going on. I mean, it's still a pretty new industry, 2.5 years, but what matters and what's important, and is it? And so I think that the University of Utah has just been a great example for us of just, we got to follow that. We got to adapt. Where's the puck going, and how do we create a program that helps that? And with NIL, we've had to adapt quickly. Like, I don't think. At some point there'll probably be courses that these student athletes care about that are more specific to branding and that sort of thing that evolve from this, because a new industry has been carved out and created. And it's up to us as a university and administration to adapt toward that and create those opportunities, because that just helps the student athletes advance their careers even more if the programs we have here adapt to this new industry that's evolving, so that they can use that to their advantage going forward. So.
Perfect, yeah. It's not a time to take counsel from your fears. It's a time to grab the bull by the horns and get after it and see how it is. I love that, and I think that's important. We shouldn't be afraid of change. We should embrace the change that are coming. And change is coming, and change is never a bad thing. I mean, it could make us a little uncomfortable, but also at the same time, it gives us opportunities. And I think that's one thing that you really touched upon, Ashley, that's really important, and Gavin has reiterated with as well, is that with these changes, we are able to have more opportunities, and that opportunity gives you more educational a stronger educational foundation upon which you can build and construct a future career and profession. That's fantastic. Thank you. What a great question. All 3 of you guys got involved in that one. That was, it's fantastic. So Brett, in your current position over auxiliaries, thinking business strategies and ethics and so forth, how has the NIL impacted you? What are some positives and what are some negatives that you've seen?
Positives and negatives. Overall, it's a lot of fun, if I dare say it that way. There's certainly a lot of challenges. I don't know if I'd view them as negatives. I've always viewed challenges as an opportunity to learn and grow. So I would say one of the biggest challenges our team faces is just maintaining the knowledge. Arguably, NIL is changing daily, if not daily, weekly. And so just being at the forefront of all of those conversations, being at the forefront of all of the things that are going on. The U.S. is a very big place, and there's an economies of scale issue that is part of this conversation. For example, our sideline partner happens to be Under Armour, right? And Under Armour, maybe they're not the best example, Nike, because they're a little bit broader across the spectrum of college athletics. They're not going to work with 4,000 athletes, right? It's just not going to happen. There might be the occasional live done that is just a little in a different atmosphere, if you will. But the reality is because of the economies of scale of collegiate athletics, there's a challenge in just managing that volume of opportunity. And so I would argue in our space, that is probably the number one challenge is figuring out a way to bring something so large scale down to our Ashleys, giving them that full opportunity in a way that is meaningful for both Ashley, for, in our case, Under Armour as a sideline provider, or whomever, right? I mean, pick the company. And so that really is the challenge. And so we do work with strategic partners. You mentioned one of them earlier, Brand R or Brand depending on what the day. It's brand with the letter R. Weird name, but influencer and other things like that have allowed us to manage the economies of scale across the entire U.S. in a way that gives opportunities to our specific student athletes. So that's one challenge. The legal piece is changing all the time. New case precedent is happening as recent as last week.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. And so that's clearly a challenge. Negotiating the contracts on behalf of the university in a way that provide flexibility for the unknown future is something that is not a common, or historically has not been a common strategy when you're negotiating deals with like an Under Armour of the world, where you're looking for stability and whatnot. You add the transfer portal into the conversation. And when you're talking with retailers, in our local market, Shills or our campus store as our primary one, it is a very challenging conversation to say, we want you to bring in jerseys for every person at the U. And then all of a sudden, the next day, a student says, I'm entering the portal. And now they're gone, and this retailer has all this inventory. It's those kinds of conversations that are kind of defining my world and the space that we live in. And so it's actually, the fascinating part of it is it's changing the business model. So now, like, we've already ordered uniforms for next year's football season. How do you account for that for the players' names that might go on the back of it? You look for on-demand opportunities. We're already working on artwork for the year after that. And so it's this challenge of figuring out how to create stuff on demand so you're not over-inventoried, so that if a player does choose to enter the portal, so you can tell that this is just complicated very quickly. And those are the things that we face in managing our retailers and their financial stake in this as well. It's a delicate balance in the entire ecosystem, and I guess that's the core challenge. And I would like to give kudos to my team for managing that challenge in a way that I should have looked these numbers up. The University of Utah's merchandise program last year, do you remember? We were in the top 20 in the entire country of production, meaning revenue generated from NIL merchandise, which is a statement, right, to kind of consider. And that's because of the team that we have here, because of Gavin and his team, and because of our wonderful athletes that are engaging at a level that is meaningful to our retailers. And I would say maybe even a testament to our coaching staff for keeping the students here instead of them going into the portal in a way that makes my job really difficult. So I don't know if that helps answer all the questions. I touched on the challenges. What was the other part?
The positives and negatives.
Positives.
That you're seeing with the changes.
It's fun. It's for the first time in history we get to work with student athletes, not directly, but we get to be part of that formula. And it's really fun to be part of autograph sessions and other things like that. That's probably the best part of it all. I do wish, personally, selfishly, that we could interact more closely with the athletes, because I think that would be a lot of fun.
Oh, their attitude's infectious. I love it.
Yeah, I know. It is. Maybe I'm living through them vicariously, because I could never be a good athlete. I don't know.
Well, you're too modest, Brett. But no, it's really true. When we were doing our research, it was really awesome to be able to talk to student athletes, because I know sometimes we take our gloom and doom approach, and also we talk to a student athlete and you're like, oh my goodness, this is a good thing. There's a lot of great things that are happening. Change is a good thing, and we're seeing the change, and it's affecting them positively. So those are awesome. I might take kind of a similar question. I might pitch it at you, Gavin. As an administrator, where do you see NIL in 5 years? What do you see it next week?
Yeah. 5 years, 5 minutes from now, it could be different. I see it, obviously it's going to evolve, it's going to change, as it has over the 2.5 years. And what I don't think will change is that there'll be, student athletes will have, continue to have these opportunities and a bigger say in leveraging their brand that's helping the university's brand as well, any other university. So I don't, there's been discussions in Congress about it. Nothing's really happened from that. So I think it will continue to evolve in that space, whether there'll be federal legislation on it or not, or if the NCAA will come out with more concrete guidance on it or that sort of thing. So it's really uncertain and we don't know. So what we try to do is really control what we can control today. And so even as of 2 weeks ago, we know how that's shifted, and we're preparing, communications go out to coaches. Here's what's changed. Here, we're going to get back together and we're going to figure out how does this work for your team. And each team really is different with their approach. All of the opportunities and resources in terms of our team are available to everyone, but it's, for different teams and coaches, it's different on what the focus is. And part of my job is I've got to answer to those coaches and help provide them with what they need for their team, for their NIL, goals within their team and what matters, and try to help as much as we can. So for us, we're in a lot of conversations about it. We have a great compliance team that monitors a lot of what's going on with that. And so we're just trying to be prepared for where this is going but not losing anything today. And so we really try to, all right, what are the rules today? What are we trying to do? How are we setting this up? Who are our partners? Let's go do what we can do today. And it changes a lot. And if you don't love that, it's hard to be in that. But I kind of like the chaos of it. I like the disruption of it. I like that we can, because of our great administration and because of President Randall's an entrepreneur, at heart, because of that, I think we're really poised to just, all right, here it changed. How can we leverage this to our benefit, which really is to the benefit of the student athlete? And so I love that mindset, and that how do we become the leaders in this space? We want to constantly be number one in it. And number one can mean different things, because certain other universities potentially have more resources or more of that, but how, for this market, for this school, how can we maximize what we're doing? And that's an ongoing goal. We gotta get better every day at what we're doing so that student athletes can have those opportunities. So we control what we can control today. We're very mindful of what's going on. We listen, we read, we watch, we listen. We're taking that guidance. We're interpreting it. We're figuring out what we should do, and then strategically planning. All right, if it goes this way, here's how we set ourselves up for our success. If it goes this way, oh, it's going to change this. And then just having sort of that understanding that it's going to change. But, as Brett mentioned, with the transfer portal, window, like that changed. College athletics didn't change a lot for decades, right? And then within, a couple of years, it's changed quite a bit. But that's, how do we use that to our advantage to attract the best student athletes possible, and win, so that helps our university's brand, and that's what we try to control.
And you hit it on the nose. This change has opened up a lot of new territory that we were unfamiliar with regards to intercollegiate athletics. I mean, we're talking about profit sharing and unions and all these kind of things. So awesome. Thank you so much, Gavin. And I'll end my questions with Ashley. Do you like the direction this is headed as a student athlete?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, yes, it's been going on for almost 3 years, but I think it's still so brand new. You see, I mean, we've talked about it enough. You see changes every single day. But the coolest part to me about it is that it's an option, right? As an athlete, we're not forced to be put into NIL. We're not forced to go out and DM, specific companies that we want to work with. It's an option that we get to choose if we want to be a part of. And I think that's the coolest part is like, yes, we have class, yes, we have workouts, yes, we have training, all this stuff that we showed up here to be a part of. And then it also just one more thing that we have the option to go into. And it's really cool because we get to build this platform that, my platform might be a little bit different than my teammates, but that's okay because we have different interests and we want to side with different companies, and that's totally cool. And that's the coolest part about it is if I have a brand deal with a makeup company, let's say, and my teammate has a brand deal with a shoe company, then maybe we do some kind of collaboration. Or, so I've learned that through the athletes that are interested in NIL and the athletes that want to dive into it, I've been able to build a connection with, some of those athletes. And I've worked with a gymnast before, I've worked with a beach volleyball player, stuff like that without NIL, I wouldn't have been able to do. So yes, I love the direction it's going, and I think it's really cool. Back to what I started with, the whole networking thing is huge. I think right now you hear a lot about college athletics and what networking can do for you, and it's all about the people you meet and the people you talk to and where you put yourself. And I can only stand beside that because I've experienced it firsthand, and it's been awesome for me and for my future and my career, but it's also, I've seen my teammates and, other athletes in our department just bloom through it. And so, yeah, I do love the direction it's going, and I think in any direction that it will go, it will continue to be successful.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So that kind of ends my questions. I'm now going to turn it over to the audience. Thank you so much for answering those questions. Phenomenal. But we're going to turn the opportunity for you guys to ask some of our questions. So.
Everyone, I have the mic. I'll bring it to you. Please wait until you have the mic to ask your question. Thanks.
So who has any questions? I hear a gentleman up front.
You guys are obviously far more knowledgeable than the average fan like myself, and we've seen from the fan perspective the wide range of where this goes, where you see at Dartmouth, they've unionized the men's basketball team, and then you've seen recent testimony by Nick Saban saying that it's the reason he got out of coaching. So, I mean, where do you see, are we at the very beginning of this? Is there still far more to come? Have we reached the sweet spot? Are we past where we thought it should be going? Where do you see this ending up? Obviously, you've already said that no one really knows, but are we reaching a place where everyone feels more comfortable, or are we getting just kind of lost out there?
I'll take a stab at that. I think we don't. Yeah, the bottom line is we don't know, but I think it's trending in a really positive direction of how this ends up. Whether that means that this can be managed, NIL becomes an internally directed thing from the department, and there's a new fund created that goes toward utilizing name, image, and likeness for the university, that student athletes are paid through the university. Whether or not they're employees or not, those are bigger, broader discussions that are going on. But potentially, you've all probably heard of collectives, which are third-party groups that are managed, and we've got some great groups that work with us. The GARFs have been phenomenal in helping us and support this and are expanding that. Does a collective style thing become in-house where it's guided and directed more from the department, and it's not an external source that's determining whether or not they want to do deals? That's potentially a path that it can go. Could they become employees of the university? That's a branch that is being looked at and pursued. So I think they're really positive. I think the good news is I think there are lots of great conversations going on about this, about how this looks. And change in any industry it's disruptive, and it's, what does this mean? And if you're an employee, does that mean, a different status? And so all of that is uncertain, where right now it's a little more entrepreneurial. Like Ashley said, she can decide to get involved with NIL. She doesn't have to. It doesn't, she wants to pursue some opportunities, she can. So all of that, I think, is being looked at the NCAA level, I think at an administrative level, and then it'll come out at some point how it does. Timing on that is tough to say. I'm not going to make any guesses, but yeah.
I'll add a little bit from my world. I think what we're seeing, and it's kind of tied to how COVID changed in my world, right? Changed the world. The retail landscape used to be a lot about pre-booking. You essentially commit to a buy 6 months to 12 months in advance, and COVID started that pathway in the collegiate space of changing that to more real time. And if any of you have ever studied retail or how Walmart defined retail and other things like that, it's a fascinating study if you're a nerd like me. But NIL has amplified that. It's created new levels of hot market, as we call them, opportunities. And so it's redefining how we produce merchandise. And that creates a trickle challenge as we look at fair labor standards, workers' rights, all of these types of things that impacts the entire ecosystem. To create a jersey on demand, it's a different formula than we used to deal with. To create whatever on demand. And so in our world, we are going to see advancements in production, not only on scale, but on the ability to do them smaller scale, in my opinion. So imagine a small production shop inside our campus store. I think we're going to start to see things like that allow us to be flexible for the new demand that is coming to our space. And so it's kind of fun if you're a little bit of a nerd like myself. Otherwise, you're just like, I just want my shirt or whatever, right? And it'll magically appear now versus 6 months in advance. But anyway, hopefully that adds a little dimension to that question.
For Ashley, what type of NIL deals do you personally think help your platform that you have done in the past or that you're hoping to do in the future?
Yeah, I don't think I have a specific group of, a category, I guess is the best way I can say it. I've used the influencer app that we have provided to us here at the U, and that's been super helpful just because there's I can't remember exactly what it was, but there was a golf course that if we came out with a group of athletes, you could take some pictures, go play golf. It's just fun stuff like that. But then there's also, I've also worked with the Brander Group, and I did a deal down at the campus store with Zuzats, kind of just promoting the game day wear, not athletic wear, but more so what students and what the public can go buy at the student campus store. I've done stuff with athletic court grip stuff. So I don't think I personally have a category. I kind of just like to do whatever I think I personally have the most passion about, because I am a firm believer that I'm not going to give forth my best work and my best effort if I don't have passion in it. And so, I don't think I have a specific one, but I do think that the ones that I do choose to engage myself with, I make sure that I have passion with. I make sure that I believe in the success of that company just as much as they believe in the success of my brand. So.
That's awesome. Come up here.
All right, so since this is like a ethics week discussion, we've talked a lot about the good about NIL deals. What about some like the not so good slash like risks involved with NIL? Like what are some of those things we could talk about for that?
Yeah, I can kind of start. I think this is hard because there is a lot of good, and I think that's mainly what gets shared. I think speaking from a student athlete who's engaged in NIL, some of the struggles that come with it is definitely the stress management that it just adds. I think that we've already touched a ton about how it's a full-time job being a student athlete, yes. But at the same time, I've realized that when engaging in NIL deals that I need to be professional and I need to make sure that it doesn't, one brand deal doesn't overlap with how I show up to practice, how I show up to class. So I think from a personal standpoint, that's kind of one of the biggest struggles that I've dealt with is staying professional, making sure that I'm putting out the work that I want to put out and I'm proud of what I put out, and that is time consuming. And 24 hours in a day only is 24 hours, and it turns into sometimes a hustle, and that's okay. Like going into NIL, I knew that it was gonna be another thing on my schedule, but I find, like kind of how Gavin said, he finds fun in the chaos. I find the same fun in that, where there's a lot of struggles, and I think also kind of something I touched on earlier was protecting like my eligibility and stuff. That's also always in the back of my head. Like, am I doing the right thing? Am I, crossing any lines I shouldn't be crossing? So there's a lot of small details that we just have to be constantly checking in on. But I found that once you get used to it and you become an NIL athlete, that it starts to become easier, and that's when you can start to focus on just the fun of it.
Can I add one thing to that question? My team talks about this all the time, and hopefully this will help as well. I've spent a lifetime learning skills in negotiating and contract management and things like that. We have a fear in our office that companies utilizing someone like myself negotiating could cause some challenge for our athletes if they're not trained up in a way to manage those negotiations and those contracts. So we have a fear of the world taking advantage of the athletes in an unethical way. I think the stuff that Gavin and team and what we're involved with help with that, but that is a fear of mine. So I'm not saying there's anything going on here, but hopefully that helps add some dimension to that question.
I'll just add to Brett. So one of the things that we're really happy about implementing on our side through the influencer app is a disclosure process. So student athletes that do a deal, our compliance team asks them to disclose it to our compliance team so that they can review those contracts and look for anything nefarious in there that might look for future earnings or that sort of thing. They're not reviewing it to say, oh, actually, you should ask for X amount of dollars more. Here's your negotiating leverage, which would be cool at some point. We'll see how this space evolves. But we are very protective of our student athletes. They're adults. They get to come here, do deals, but we try to protect them as much as we can with some of the safeguards that we put in place. That's one of the things we use.
Yeah.
Now, the NIL is student athlete focused, but it's going fast, and it really kick-started a much bigger bobsled ride, which the university will be part of this too. So what happens ultimately, it doesn't take a Nick Saban to figure out where this may be headed, and that is private groups getting equity holdings of teams, starting with the football team and moving on down. That will change the dynamic considerably when it comes to Ashley, if she's still on the team when that happens. So it's difficult to think because it's moving very fast, but are you thinking about that where the university may not even be the owner of the team?
There are different models that are being looked at, not necessarily by the university, but out in the wider nation of how this could evolve. And smart, business people are looking at different ownership structures, or how does this work, or where does this go? So we're aware of that. We're looking at that. What doesn't worry me for a student athlete like Ashley or some of these teams, even if some of these other sports do specific things, is they have their own brands that are powerful. I mean, you get a front row seat to this today of brands will want, she's building a brand that companies will want to work with, or she'll be able to leverage to get a job or go do something else. And so I'm confident in the university that will be able to, because of the caliber of student athletes that come through here, the structure may change in that sense, but you're still gonna have super talented people that excel at specific sports that will have opportunity because fans, donors, different groups find affinity and love of different teams. Everyone that loves volleyball, may not love another sport and vice versa. And so you're always going to have those groups that want to support you in that sense. But yeah, it's changing fast. We don't know necessarily what it will look like, but we're going to adapt and innovate as quickly as possible.
So I feel like, thank you so much. I think we have enough time for one more question. This gentleman up front has had his hand up for a while.
So this question is directed towards you. So we've talked a little bit about the drawbacks. Are there things that you wish you could change about those drawbacks in the NIL? Because from my understanding, it's insanely easy to make a mistake and fumble, and you lose your eligibility or you lose your NIL. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think, Gavin touched on it. We have to disclose all of our contracts that we get involved with, and it's been made very clear to us that we are advised to not move forward with the deal until the contract is disclosed because we have people working who will read the fine print. And it's not if they do come to me and they're like, hey, don't do this, like the company is trying to get something out of you that maybe you're not expecting, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh, but I want to. I'm gonna be like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like they're looking out for our safety at the end of the day. And I think that can get lost in NIL. Like we all kind of sit here and we're like, this athlete gets I don't know, whatever they end up getting, whereas there's a lot of work that's going on behind the scenes that I thankfully don't really have to deal with because these amazing people kind of do it for me, which is very nice. But I have been able to learn from them, and I'll be able to take that along with me in the future.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much for your questions. Once again, I'd like to thank Brett, Gavin, and Ashley for being here. Let's give them another round of applause for taking time out of their discussion. Thank you, and have